Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Boruto Anime episode review. This one's going to be for episode 39, which is called The Path Lit by the Full Moon. And this is our Maitake one-shot adaptation in the anime. Interesting that they decided to do it here. I ultimately think it made sense because of the scene they added in to kind of use as setup for, I suppose, why this is the story that's being presented, why Maitake's backstory is even in any way being thought of. And that scene was basically Sarada realizing, hey, I don't know that much about you. What type of missions do you want to do? And him just saying, I'll just do the type of missions Boruto wants to do. And her asking him the question, do you have any will of your own? Like, just wanting to follow Boruto like that. And it's this big moment where Sarada's clearly notes something more meaningful in his answer. And his answer is just that, I decided this on my own. And that being a big theme of this episode, and in general what's going on with the whole Orochimaru being Mitake's father thing. And that is just the idea of like free will for these artificial beings created by Orochimaru. And I think that's what's so good about this episode, is that the episode makes you kind of be like, okay, Orochimaru, cool, he's changed. Oh no, is he going back to doing what he was doing before? And then at the end being like, oh no, he actually cares about them. And when he's saying all this stuff about being, a loving father and stuff like that, the only thing that you can be excused for is stuff done out of love for your children. It's like, no, he kind of actually means that. He's going about it in a sort of weird way because it's Orochimaru, but he still fundamentally went through all of this to allow Maitake kind of like the best life possible, where he could make his own decisions, and he wasn't defined by just making the decisions Orochimaru would make, but he also wasn't defined by just like siding with other artificial beings or whatever way they were really going with that kind of dynamic. So I thought that was a really cool way to really go about things, of like, this is the 6th attempt of Orochimaru to have Maitake kind of get to this point where he's making decisions in like the right way. And the setup of like, okay, his memory is being erased. Then he goes on this mission to fight basically the clone of himself. And ultimately just this setup to get to a point where Maitake is given this decision because he's kind of been manipulated. He doesn't know who he is. Orochimaru's being kind of mysterious and not really telling him anything about him. He finds out he's an artificial being, but he also finds out there's someone exactly like him who's older, who has seemingly been abandoned. And he's asked with this decision, side with your creator or side with the other clone who also has been, abandoned basically by Orochimaru. And so the idea is that the first 5 times he actually made a decision. He sided with Orochimaru or the other Maitake log, and that was the wrong decision. So they kind of reset the situation to hopefully attempt to get to some sort of way where he would be more about free will. And so this time he makes that decision. He steals the thing that is meant to say, like, it has the coding for what the Mitsukis are. But instead it's actually this setup of like, this was the way to pass the test, by Maitake taking the kind of the vial thing on his own and looking at himself, and that would be the proof that he passed. And him making that decision to side with neither of them, and instead to just, take the coding off by himself and make a decision there. But when he does that, he comes across, of course, the picture of Boruto, and that's where they really lay into the kind of symbolism of what's going on here. They do some really interesting things of like defining what Mitake's name means, in that Mi is like 6, so it kind of represents the 6th time that this has happened. And then the Suki bit, they say, is like, initially say it means vessel, but it also means moon. And the comparison is that when he makes the wrong decision, he's just a vessel. He's just the clone. He's just this artificial being. But now that he has this sun, and if he manages to move his life on in a way where he can follow this sun, be lit up by this sun, then he becomes the moon, because they make this idea of like, his destiny, I suppose, in a way is kind of like defined by darkness because it's Orochimaru. But by siding in a way, like having the having the influence of someone like a Boruto, he then kind of has an opportunity to, you know, follow the light and actually shine light on other people. And that is the whole moon kind of analogy that they're going for here. So I thought that was actually really, really well written. And it was in the manga as well. Of course, you just get to kind of see it a little bit better here. Yeah, it's just this cool idea of just, in the anime up to now, we've had a lot of moments where Mitsuki has talked about how in the past I kind of wouldn't have made that decision, but because I've been influenced by Boruto and my classmates, I've actually made the decision to be more of a team player, or, you know, care about someone when they're failing, or they do this or that because he's being inspired by Boruto and is in a way learning from him. That it's, I suppose, based on his origins, you would think he'd kind of just in a way grow up to just be another sort of Orochimaru kind of type character who doesn't really have the best morals and doesn't really care about people, but he's really starting to get that. By the end of the episode, he says, you know, I trust both of you. He doesn't really take sides with Boruto or Sarada. And he just says, you know, I trust both of you, and that's the key thing. And in the test where they became Genin, of course, he was obviously fighting Shino to allow Boruto to do what he needed to do, and that showed great teamwork as well. And it really shows the growth that the character has gone through, and the importance of basically any time Mitsuki makes a decision like, I did this on my own, it's different than the way I would have done things. It's different than the way Orochimaru would have done things. And that makes the character very interesting, but it also sets up the idea of, is the influence of Boruto, like, is it too much of an influence? Or will there be a point where Mitsuki actually has to, you know, help Boruto make a right decision? That's going to be the interesting thing. When the sun isn't always shining in the right way on Mitsuki, how does he react? Does he just follow Boruto's lead, even though maybe Boruto's going in the wrong direction? Or does Mitsuki then have to be the one to kind of use his light to guide Boruto back on track? There's an option to do that if they're really, really going to commit over the course of this series to, you know, this relationship between, you know, Boruto and Mitsuki being a very important one. So there's that. I still think they need to develop Mitsuki and Sarada's relationship a little bit more. Create, I suppose, what their dynamic actually is. Because while it was nice to see them talk in this episode, they still don't necessarily have a, you know, dynamic within the team like a lot of the other groups kind of do. It very much feels like, you know, it's Sarada and Boruto have a relationship, Boruto and Mitsuki have a relationship, but then the other third relationship is just kind of this, they're on the same team. What's the goal here with those two? And that's where I'd like to see where they necessarily go. I suppose it could be some sort of a thing where, because Sarada tends to often dismiss Boruto, and just maybe not speak massively like truthfully about him all the time. She doesn't really reveal how she truly feels about him a lot of the time. Instead, she kind of masks a lot of that with just putting him down because he's late, he's an idiot, blah blah blah. Mitsuki could help her to, I suppose, be a little bit more open about Boruto. They could just have this dynamic where they both kind of talk to each other about how they feel about Boruto, and they kind of confide in each other in that way, or something like that. I think they just do need to get to a point where there is a dynamic going on between the two of them. But going back to the episode, there were some pretty cool fight scenes. The Orochimaru log fight was really, really well animated. I suppose I potentially would question why they seemingly put so much effort into a fight that ultimately didn't really mean anything, because it was just effectively more or less like the 6th time that this exact fight has happened. And by the end of the episode, that fight isn't particularly important. So I'm almost kind of like, wait, if there's a fight coming up in the next couple of episodes and it's not animated as well as this, why didn't you just, you know, shift it over? Because the importance of this episode was character focus. The only scene you really needed to get right with the animation and just like get it spot on was the Mitsuki Sage mode reveal. That was the key bit to animate, not necessarily Orochimaru fighting Log. Like, if we are indeed going to get like the Team 7's first mission, why not devote that animation budget, that time, to something going on there? Again, we don't know what the big fight coming up soon is, but it just feels a little bit misplaced of that. Like, if it kind of felt like they're just like, oh cool, there's a sword fight coming up, we'll just put all of the budget into this, even though it's not particularly important. But the animation for the Sage Mode reveal was really well done, because they set that up the entire episode, and we know from the exam and how Shino lost to Mitsuki, that he has this special ability, and to finally get it revealed that it's this Snake Sage Mode type thing, but it's kind of different because we've seen Snake Sage Mode before with Kabuto, but it's different than that. So I'm not really sure if they're basically saying it has its origins kind of elsewhere. So I'm not really sure what to exactly make of it, because like it just seemed like the way they set it up is that he just has this innate ability, rather than necessarily he's trained to learn it. And then again, this comes down to the fact that we still jump into Mitsuki after a lot has happened to him. So there is still like a deeper backstory with Mitsuki, potentially with regards to where his training comes from. Because they obviously set up that Kabuto is like, learns before Orochimaru how to activate Snake Sage Mode, and that's something that Orochimaru never actually managed to accomplish. So I assume Orochimaru knew the idea about he has to go to this specific place to learn the Snake Sage Mode. So maybe Mitsuki did that when he was younger, but or is it just an innate power that he has that is referencing the whole fact that Yugo, who we didn't see in this episode, but obviously his powers relate to Sage Mode a lot, so is there an aspect of him involved here where, like, you know, Mitsuki is potentially made from some of the DNA of like Orochimaru plus Yugo, and together that kind of forms like Mitsuki with the snake abilities of Orochimaru, but also the Sage Mode stuff that sort of Yugo has. That's, I think, something they'll need to explain at some point down the road. Maybe it's just he has the basic ability, but at some point we'll have to properly learn Sage Mode, like Naruto style, but with the snakes. And that could lead to a really cool kind of solo little story for Mitsuki down the line, if he ever has to go to the I can't even remember what the exact name of the snake place is, because we know it's like something or other woods for the Slug Sage Mode, which I don't think we've seen that properly yet. Mount Mayaboku is it for the Toad Sages, and then it's I know Kabuto says it in the episode where he reveals what it is that he went to train in it. So I could potentially see some sort of an arc where Mitsuki goes there, because I assume they'll eventually get to a point where all the members of the team have some sort of a like summoning animal, and so we'll be referencing those specific places. Now, of course, it seems like this time round it's going to be the Uchiha member of our group who gets the slug, probably. Mitsuki will probably end up being the one with the snake. Why not? And then it would leave Boruto to get the toad again, but it almost feels like you maybe want to separate Boruto from the toad. So I don't know. They may, but then you'd kind of have to have Boruto either get his own unique summoning animal or have him be the one with the slug. I'm not really sure. I think probably the way to go is have Boruto get the toad summoning, because then you could have Boruto meet Gamakichi in kind of the same way that Naruto met Gamabunta, as like this kind of veteran toad who Boruto doesn't know, but obviously one of Boruto's mentors knows very well. And then somewhere down the road you introduce another kind of toad that becomes Boruto's one. But anyway, that's a bit of a distraction from other stuff going on. So yeah, the episode overall, I think, was very good. It was a needed episode to establish more about Mitsuki. It was the right time, just after the team is formed, to have the story come out. I still think there needs to be some sort of a thing where it is clear that the team knows this story, because the way they present it here, it's just Mitsuki after Sarada basically questions, do you have a will of your own, he basically thinks about this story, and that's why we get the backstory, but he doesn't actually tell that to her, as far as we're aware. He doesn't tell that to Boruto. So when is the big reveal that comes out, where he properly to everyone revealed that, okay, I'm Orochimaru's son, I'm an artificial being, I have this sage mode stuff, and this is why I'm at this point in time. So that's all sort of interesting stuff. And I suppose that combined with the fact that like we've had moments where like Orochimaru has talked to Naruto and it's kind of like thanked him for allowing Mitsuki to be in the academy. The really fun scene in one of the earlier episodes where like Mitsuki actually came over to Naruto's house with Boruto for like dinner. That was a really cool scene because you could tell that Naruto was kind of happy that like his son is friends with like maybe the last person in the class he expected him to be, and it's kind of like, okay, this is going to be interesting, like Mitsuki and Boruto are friends. What is Mitsuki actually like? And to find out that he's actually fairly normal but a little bit odd was this kind of cool reveal, and I suppose proof of how Naruto being more lenient in some of these things and being like, okay, Orochimaru, you've made yourself a son, we'll allow him to go to the academy. We'll watch him, but we'll allow him to go to the academy, and it's worked out well with Mitsuki. So, very successful episode, covering needed ground, and yeah, overall well animated. I just hope they, I think, explore a little bit more around Mitsuki. As I said, his relationship with Sarada, I do think needs to be expanded to create some sort of a unique dynamic between the two of them. And just in general, like I hope they cover more of like Mitsuki's backstory about like when everyone finds out about it and all that sort of stuff. Explaining the Sage Mode a little bit better, but I assume that will come once we get into situations where Mitsuki's actually going to be pushed to the limit to actually use it more often. But yeah, that's been my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one, as well as what I had to say about it. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.